UFC Fight Night, Vettori versus Dolidze is this week. I'm going to give you a full card prediction breakdown of all 13 fights on this card, starting with Yuneisy Duben versus Carli Judice. Just so you know, going into this card, this is probably like one of the best 4-fight openers of any UFC card I've ever seen. So I'm really looking forward to this card. The card's kind of meh for an Apex card. It's not the worst I've seen, especially for an Apex. But I'll be watching this for sure. I don't know about the first 4 fights. I was being sarcastic because it is a little rough. But this is a decent card. It's watchable, especially towards the main card. It gets a little bit better, but this one might be a little bit rough getting through. So starting off, we got Duben versus Judice. When I was actually watching the film for this fight, Judice actually looked pretty solid. She's 3-2, but her skill is just a little bit higher than what her record says. Like, she went to a split decision with Gabriela Hernandez, which she's a decent fighter, and then Ernesto Caracate went to a split decision, lost there as well. Her last fight against Gabriela Hernandez, that first round was actually pretty entertaining. It made my job watching this kind of stuff a little bit easier. So I am going to go with Carli Judice in this fight. I do not mind a Yuneisy, I think it's how you say her name, Duben, upset, though. She's plus 380. She has crazy power in her hands. I think in every single fight she's won by KO. Oh, I guess won by submission. But her last fight, she put like this mom of like 3 out cold. I mean, the opponent she's facing and her opponents that she half fought are not good at all. Like the last fight, she was just kind of running forward with her chin out, and she just caught her. So I don't know if Carli Judice is necessarily going to do that. There were a lot of moments where Gabriela Hernandez was landing pretty well on Judice to the face, like straight down the pipe, like quite a few times, and was like launching her head back. That's what I'm saying. Duben as a betting underdog, I think is actually kind of worth it here, and I'm probably going to put a little money on Duben for this fight because I can just see her cracking the chin of Judice. But Judice is actually really good hand speed. I won't say really good. She's good. She'd probably be getting wins over these girls if she was really good, but good hand speed. Her striking actually looks like a decent level for women's MMA. So I might watch this fight. I'm actually kind of interested to see who wins this one. So let's move on. Your Josiane Nunes versus Priscila Cachoeira. Ooh, I'm going with Josiane Nunes. She's actually decent. Priscila Cachoeira is 36 years of age. Very hittable. Josiane Nunes is small, but she's stocky and has a lot of power in her hands. I think she just wins on damage in this fight. So let's move on. We have André Lima versus Daniel Barez. I'm going to go with André Lima. Daniel Barez is pretty much a wrestler, and from what I've seen, André Lima is a pretty good grappler as well. If you don't know who André Lima is, he's the guy that got bit, I believe, by biting. That's a funny one. Igor Severino, he got bit in that fight pretty early on in that one. The guy got cut and everything, got the tattooed and everything. Beat Mitch Raposo by split decision. Went to a decision with Felipe Dos Santos and won. Felipe Dos Santos was the guy that went on short notice against Manel Cap and actually made it pretty competitive. I believe he fights with Shootbox as well, so he's a pretty good grappler, and he was getting out-grappled by André Lima. So I think he can out-grapple Daniel Barez if he wants to. I think he will probably look pretty solid on the feet. Also, he's 10 years younger than Barez. He's going to continue to get better. Minus 300 favorite. I think he wins this one for sure, probably by submission. I don't mind him getting a finish here, but I can also see it going to a decision. I just think Felipe Dos Santos is a much higher level opponent than Daniel Barez in this fight. So let's move on. We have Sam Hughes versus Stephanie Luciano. Oh my lord. Stephanie Luciano doesn't look bad. She's 25 years of age. Her last fight she won against Talita Alankar by decision. It was a lot more dominant than the previous fight, which was a draw, I believe. Was this a draw? Yeah, it was a draw on the Contender Series. But Sam Hughes, I can see her kind of like, she's not the best of fighters in the world, and I can just kind of see her, even in women's MMA, like the older you are, it really doesn't matter, because I feel like anyone can kind of get fraud checked at this point. This is lower level women's MMA, to be fair. Sam Hughes, I feel like she can kind of dog this fight out if she wants to, but I'm just going to play a little safe here. I'm going to go with the 25-year-old. If Sam Hughes wins this one, I kind of won't be surprised it is lower level women's MMA, but I think Luciano, I'm just going to take her upside in this one. I thought she looked pretty good against Talita Alankar, but Alankar isn't the best either. So I'm going to go Luciano by decision. I wouldn't be surprised if Sam Hughes wins. Let's move on. We have Josias Musasa. Thank God we're over that. Versus Carlos Vera. I'm going Josias Musasa. Carlos Vera is a pretty good grappler, but that's pretty much it. If he gets on the ground or on his back, he's pretty dangerous from there. Like you saw Ringa Nakamura. He looked pretty impressive because he was able to stay out of those rough grappling positions, but this guy kind of just stays on his back quite a bit. Josias Musasa, though, he's got some crazy power in his hands. He'll kind of track you down, and he's got pretty solid boxing. I am a little bit worried if he does get a decently high level opponent in his next few fights. He probably won't. Maybe his next fight he'll probably win as well, but I think when the level of competition starts getting up there, I'm worried that he's probably going to struggle with them. So I think at the lower level comp, I think he'll run through a guy like Carlos Vera, but as it gets a little bit higher, I mean, he's only 26, so he could keep getting better, but I think he runs through Carlos Vera in this fight. I'm going to say by decision. People are saying by finish. I mean, I would not mind him KOing Carlos Vera, but the thing is when Vera gets on the ground, he's like super dangerous. So it's not like it's not like he's going to dive on the ground and it's going to be completely safe there. Like, he's going to go for ground and pound while Vera's trying to attack from the bottom. So I'm going to say a decision in this one. He could just completely flatline him, and I could be super wrong here, but he is 10 years younger as well. Is going to be the much better striker. His nickname's the KO Wizard. Pequeño means, is it small? Small in Spanish? Is that what that means? I don't know. Let's move on. We have Su Young Yu versus AJ Cunningham. Su Young Yu, it took me a while to find one of his fights because I believe, oh boy, oh god, I'm not going to say it. That one's the UFC Macau card, which I can't seem to find. You actually have to use a VPN to find that fight on Fight Pass for some reason. You can't even get it on ESPN Plus either. And then you know how those Road to UFC fights are. It's completely unorganized. However, I was able to find this one relatively easily. A Shohei Nose fight. He looks solid. He's a pretty good wrestler. He's a little bit undersized at bantamweight, weirdly enough. I believe Tapology said this was a 145 bout. It's now saying it's a 135, so I'm gonna think it's 135. And AJ Cunningham in his last fight against Ludovic Klein was fighting at 155. He's normally a 145er, of course, and Ludovic Klein kind of ran through him. He did have a couple good moments on the feet. He is going to be a lot longer than Su Young Yu in this fight. He's going to have, 6 inches of reach, and he's going to be, 4 inches taller. There's going to be a lot of opportunities to shoot on AJ Cunningham. I'm going to be very interested to see how his chin holds up and how he looks strength-wise at 135, because if he's feeling comfortable fighting at 155, and he's normally a 145 pounder, but 135 is a whole different thing. And he's 5'10", like he's a bigger dude too. So it'll be very interesting to see what he looks like in this fight. Su Young Yu does have some decent striking. I do feel like he would struggle against an AJ Cunningham who's a lot longer in this one. Maybe you can catch AJ Cunningham on the chin. Ludovic Klein was able to, who's pretty solid. And then Steven Nugent, I believe, was on the Contender Series like 2 or 3 times, and third time's the charm or whatever it was. I think it was the third time. It could have been the second time, but got the finish over AJ Cunningham in that fight. So Steven Nugent, I think, is pretty solid, but I don't know. Minus 700, I feel like that's kind of crazy. I don't know. I'm going to go with Su Young Yu here. I don't think I've seen enough from AJ Cunningham for me to feel decently solid about him in this fight. Like, he landed a couple good punches on Ludovic Klein when Ludovic Klein was being super aggressive and gunning him down. So I can't really make my prediction off of that. So I'm going to go Su Young Yu here. He can wrestle. He can stand up. I think he can mix it in on AJ Cunningham. I don't think he finishes AJ Cunningham in this fight. I'm going to say Su Young Yu by decision. Let's move on. We have Waldo Cortes-Acosta versus Ryan Spann. Ryan Spann, I believe, is moving up to heavyweight for this fight. I think I'm going to go with Ryan Spann in this one. And the reason why is you've seen all sorts of fighters move up divisions and look a lot better. Like featherweight to lightweight, you had Max Holloway. I guess Max Holloway looked good at featherweight anyways, but Dustin Poirier moved up. You have like a Gilbert Burns who moved from lightweight to welterweight. You have, I mean, it's just a really big speed difference. I'm sure I can think of another one, but there's a massive speed difference when moving divisions, because a lot smaller, you're working a lot faster than the guys who are a lot heavier. So it does kind of stop at like middleweight to light heavyweight to heavyweight, because they're a certain skill level. It's a different speed at that point, but there's definitely a relatively big speed difference going through those divisions. So I'm gonna go with Ryan Spann here. I do think Ryan's like I don't think Waldo Cortes-Acosta going up against fat heavyweights. I know I just kind of said that. Well, middleweights, light heavyweights, and heavyweights are all kind of similar, but with Ryan Spann, he's long, 79 inches of reach here, and then he's also fast with his hands, and he's got a lot of power. I don't think Waldo Cortes-Acosta has fought someone other than like a fat, like I guess he won against Robellis to Spain, but he like wrestled him, so he's not gonna be able to do that against Ryan Spann. I think Spann's a much higher level stand-up fighter than any of these fat heavyweights he's been fighting. So I'm gonna go Ryan Spann here. I think it's just gonna be a different level of skill. That's pretty much what I have for this fight, honestly. It's nothing crazy. I don't think he KOs Cortes-Acosta. I am worried about Ryan Spann's chin, because he is a very weird fighter. He's one of those middleweight fighters where he's very 50-50, where he looks good in one fight and then looks horrible in the next one. So I'm going to go with Ryan Spann in this one. He's an underdog. Very interesting. Let's move on. We have Kevin Vallejos versus Sungwoo Choi. I'm going with Kevin Vallejos. I actually believe, when reviewing this fight, I picked him to beat Gene Silva on the Contender Series, and that pick's looking a little rough these days. But Vallejos is actually a pretty solid boxer. Got a pretty nice win against Cam Teague in his last fight, and I don't even know why. I shouldn't know who Cam Teague is, because I don't know if I even covered that fight for the Contender Series or not. But I put on a random LFA card in Cam Teague. I believe it was LFA. Cam Teague was like kind of just dogging it out a little bit, like he just became a punching bag for like most of the fight. Was it? No, it was Fury. There you go. It was against Austin Lingo. That's what it was. He's fighting Austin Lingo, and he's just taking so much fucking damage until Austin Lingo finally broke. And Austin Lingo actually looked pretty good in that fight, so I felt pretty bad. But Cam Teague literally just became a punching bag and ended up finishing Austin Lingo in that one. So crazy fight, but Vallejos kind of just ran right through Cam T, just went straight to the body, was chewing him up against the fence. Sungwoo Choi, I mean, he's lost 4 of his last 5. Won against Jarno Aarons, which is actually a pretty solid win to have. Unfortunately, Aarons got cut from the UFC, so didn't really get to see much of him. It's actually a pretty solid win to have. It seemed like after that fight, Jarno Aarons kind of just went crazy and looked pretty good in his next 2 fights, and I think before getting cut. But he also lost to Steve Garcia, who's a pretty good fighter as well. I think Kevin Vallejos was very good on the feet. I can see him actually getting a finish against Sungwoo Choi. I got KO'd by Mike Trezano, submitted by Alex Caceres. That was 3 years ago. I'm going to go with Kevin Vallejos. Going to be 10 years younger in this fight. He's going to be at a pretty sizable reach disadvantage too. What is this, a 6-inch reach disadvantage? I still like him in this one. He's very clean on the feet. I think he chews up Sungwoo Choi in this one. I think he wins in about like the 2nd or 3rd round by TKO. So let's move on. We have DR Nergoze versus, I should really be learning these ones, Brenson Ribeiro. I'm going with DR in this one. He has a lot of tools on the feet. He had a really nice head kick KO on the Contender Series. He's looking kind of rough. I'm not going to lie on the Contender Series. He's looking a little rough. He couldn't really find his shot, but then he eventually found it. I believe it was in like the 2nd round. Brenson Ribeiro had a pretty good performance on the Contender Series. I believe it was against Bruno Lopez, sorry, my bad. Won that one by KO. Pretty big upset, one of the bigger upsets of that year for the Contender Series, along with the George Hardwick fight. Ended up losing to Mingyang Zhang. Magomed, I'm not going to say that. And then won against Kyle Machado by split decision. I'm going to go DR in this one. Brenson Ribeiro is just pretty much 2 hit or miss for me. I can't feel confident picking him at this point. Maybe he can't get the upset. He does have a 7-inch reach advantage, which, I mean, at plus 220, it might be worth looking at, but I think DR Nergoze, way too many tools on the feet. I think he can catch Brenson Ribeiro. Let's move on. TKO, I would probably say late 1st, maybe 2nd round TKO for this one. Let's move on. We have Damon Blackshear versus Cody Gibson. I'm going to go with Damon Blackshear. I think he's just a higher skill level than Cody Gibson, and Cody Gibson's 37.5 years of age. He's going to be 7 years older than Damon Blackshear. Like, let's not forget, Damon Blackshear won against Jose Johnson with a twist, and I think like a week later had a pretty competitive fight with Mario Batista. I still think Batista won that fight upon rewatch, but it was pretty competitive. Got KO'd pretty badly by Montel Jackson, but came back and submitted Cody Stamann, who's a pretty good wrestler as well. Cody Gibson's beating, Chad Anhelinger, Brian Kelleher, but then losing to like a Miles Johns and a Brad Katona. Like, I don't think that's a good look at all. I think Damon Blackshear is at least on the level of Miles Johnson and Brad Katona, or at least definitely better than them. I mean, if you're getting a twister in the UFC, you're definitely pretty solid. And making it competitive with Mario Batista on short notice a week later on a 2nd weight cut, I think that's pretty impressive as well. So I think he's a much higher skill level than any of Cody Gibson's losses that he's had recently. Cody Gibson's looking a lot older, and he's looking kind of disappointing, and at least in that Miles Johns fight. He's actually been pretty active, which I do like seeing, but this isn't Chad Anhelinger here. This is Damon Blackshear. He's a 1-inch reach advantage, 7 years younger. I'm going to take him in this one. Way too skilled. I can also see him getting a submission, honestly. I could see him getting him down to the ground and submitting him. And I'm not really too worried about Cody Gibson's stand-up against Damon Blackshear either. Like, I think that's the problem with this fight as well. Like, there's no real KO threat for Blackshear on the feet like there was against a Montel Jackson, or maybe even like a Mario Batista. Mario Batista is more of like an output guy. He doesn't have crazy power, but he's still pretty skilled on the feet. So let's move on. We have Alexander Hernandez versus Kurt Holobaugh. This fight should actually be pretty good. I'm kind of looking forward to this one. I think this one could be a war. I think some people forget, man. Alexander Hernandez at 155 might be the best fighter we've ever seen. Probably not true. I think, what was his last couple fights? I mean, it's been that thing where it's like a 145, he looks like shit, and then 155, he looks a lot better. Like, he'll get toasted by Renato Moicano, Billy Quarantillo, and then whip up Jim Miller, who's a pretty solid opponent to be at this point, like a gatekeeper for that lower ranked. And that was when Jim Miller was knocking out all these fucking prospects that were coming into the UFC. So it was actually a pretty solid win to have. Like, yeah, he was on a 3-fight win streak, just beat Donald Cerrone, Nicholas Mota, Eric Gonzalez, and then wins a decision against them, then beats like a Jesse Butler, Gabriel Benitez. Like, he's just fighting all these rookies coming into the UFC and just fraud checking them immediately. And Alexander Hernandez looked pretty good against him. So he beat the other tough teammate of Kurt Holobaugh. I think he can kind of do the same here. Holobaugh's hands do look pretty solid, but he's also 38 years of age. Alexander Hernandez, I don't think he's going to gas out in this fight, so I think he'll look pretty good. I'm not worried about him getting broken with bad cardio in this one. So I'm going to go with Alexander Hernandez by decision. Let's move on. We have Elizeu Zaleski versus Chidi and Njokuani. A very interesting fight here because I'm definitely playing with the idea of choosing Chidi in this fight. He has been relying on his takedowns quite a bit recently. His last fight against Jared Goodman was pretty boring. Kind of just held him up against the fence the entire time and went to a split decision with Reese McKee and won that one. But I mean, he was on a pretty rough streak of losses after looking pretty decent coming into the UFC. So that was a little bit worrying there. Like, he was on a 4-fight, or sorry, what was that? A 3 fight win streak coming into the UFC, lost 3 straight, and then got 2 wins there. Elizeu Zaleski is very interesting because it feels like he does, especially recently, he does really well against one-dimensional grapplers whose stand-up isn't like that great. It's like a solid version of the stand-up because Chidi and Njokuani's wrestling a little bit more now, and that does worry me because it seems like he's not confident in his striking ability. Because even that Albert Dariah fight, that was way too close for the Chidi and Njokuani. I feel like you should definitely be winning that fight for sure. I mean, he even lost that fight. Elizeu Zaleski is good at kind of stuffing the takedowns and taking advantage of a wrestler's bad striking, like he did against Henat Fakrdinov. We've seen that Renat has had way too many close fights now. He I won't say he fraud checked him, but it humanized Renat in that fight for sure. Lost to Randy Brown, who's a good striker, which does kind of worry me in this one. Like, if Chidi and Njokuani stays on his striking in this fight, will he be able to take advantage of Elizeu Zaleski not trying to go for a takedown? Because I feel like he can do better than Zaleski on the feet here. But then you see a Zach Drogan where Zaleski kind of just runs right through. I don't know how good that guy is, but even then, like, Abu Bakar stuffed all the takedowns, looked really well there. I'm not going to give too much shit for Benoit Saint-Denis because he took on short notice up a division and all that. But Muslim Salikov, stand-up fighter, beat Elizeu Zaleski. Leach beat Elizeu Zaleski on the feet. Like, that's the thing. Like, these stand-up fighters are whooping up Elizeu Zaleski. Chidi has looked good coming down a division at welterweight. Should I take him? He's gonna have a 7-inch reach advantage. I might take Chidi and Njokuani. He's bummed me out way too many times. He's disappointed me too many times. However, I think this might be the last one for sure that I'll probably pick Chidi and Njokuani if he ends up losing this, unless they just give him a bum. But I think he can beat Elizeu Zaleski on the feet here. I think he's a better striker. Elizeu Zaleski's kind of wild, which I do think kind of gives him an advantage in this fight. But I feel like recently, I think it's been like, since like 2018, since he's actually beaten like he lost a Leach stand-up fighter, Luigi Vendramin, beat Sean Strickland, pretty good win to have there, but that was at welterweight. That's all the way back in 2018. It seems like these strikers are doing pretty well against them, not guys that rely on their wrestling too much. And you kind of can say the same thing with Chidi, how he's been wrestling up against the fence a lot recently, but I'm going to go with Chidi in this one. It's going to be a very close fight, split decision win. People might be able to say robbery for it. I think it's going to be a pretty close fight. Let's move on. We have Marvin Vettori versus Roman Dolidze. I'm going Roman Dolidze in this fight. Marvin Vettori's last fight was almost 2 years ago against Jared Cannonier, where he actually looked good early on. I believe he hurt Jared Cannonier, and then he just proceeded to just get whooped in that fight. I don't think Vettori's chin is going to crack in this one. This is kind of like an ongoing thing with Vettori because he just gets hit so many damn times. When is that chin going to crack? It's the same thing with Max Holloway, which we found out it cracked, and he just got finished. And I guess that's a different conversation to have with Max. But Roman Dolidze, I feel like he continues to get better and better every time I see him. Like, he beat Kevin Holland, he beat Anthony Smith, which was up a division, actually looked pretty solid there. Anthony Smith is, I don't know at this point, but I feel like maybe a year ago he was maybe fraud checking some guys, if you could say that. Roman Dolidze is actually 5 years older than Marvin Vettori here. They did fight before. I believe he lost to Vettori. It's actually a relatively close fight. Like, the decisions kind of went either way between fans. I feel like that was a pretty controversial fight from what I remember, but I just feel like Roman Dolidze is just continuing to improve. I feel like Marvin Vettori is kind of stagnated for a while in his career, and I even with the 2 years off, like, I'm not even sure how much he's going to improve. I feel like I've seen Marvin Vettori just not really improve for a very long time, like, where he's just relying on his stand-up a lot more than what he used to do. He used to wrestle quite a bit, take guys down, and mix in the striking a little bit, but it seems like a lot recently he's just been standing up with these guys. Costa, he didn't take him down. I think Izzy was the last time he actually went for a takedown, is what I'm remembering. I don't have the stats page up or anything like that, but Costa, can't remember him shooting in that one. Whitaker, he got pieced up. I was worried about his shin cracking in that one. Roman Dolidze won that fight, and then Jared Cannonier won that fight. Maybe he shot for a takedown in that one, or maybe he got taken down in that one, but I feel like he hasn't shot a takedown in a very long time. Relies too much on his striking and his chin. His striking, I just don't think is good enough to hang with the upper part of this division. So Roman Dolidze just continues to impress me. I feel like if it does get on the ground, I am very worried about Marvin Vettori. Roman Dolidze is just one of those guys, like, once it gets to the ground, like, you're in immediate danger, especially with this higher weight division where they're not really as skilled as some of these lower weight divisions on the ground, or at least like well balanced as some of these guys in their fight game. Like, he's taking advantage of a lot of these guys. And of course, you had that, the calf slicer on Jack Hermanson, and it was able to just TKO him from that or something like that. He's able to take down Kevin Holland. Like, I feel like Roman Dolidze, has good power in his hands. Isn't the best striker, but I do feel like it has gotten a little bit better technique wise. I feel like I have to go with Roman Dolidze. He's not going to KO Marvin Vettori here, but I just feel like Vettori I mean, I just need to see something from it. You know what I mean? Like if I see him get better, if he just runs through Roman Dolidze, it's gonna be different. But I just feel like I haven't seen him improve. I haven't seen him change. I have seen that from Roman Dolidze. So I'm going to go Roman Dolidze in this one by decision. A lot of people are taking Vettori. I think that's very interesting. He is quite a bit older, but it is a higher weight division where age doesn't really matter too much. So I'm going to go Roman Dolidze here by decision. Let me know who you guys have down below in the main event, and I'll see you guys next time.